So just to briefly explain what this is about, how many of you were part of the first session about understanding your spiritual gifts? A few of you, okay. And for those of you that didn't attend the first session, do you know anything currently about spiritual gifts as far as how it relates in the Bible? I see some head nods, okay, very good. So that's what we're really talking about today is as men, obviously we are very much workers. We like to work, or we like to have some form of hobby or type of education that we really pour our effort into. And what's interesting about these spiritual gifts is that it gives us the opportunity to glorify God without needing to be a pastor or a missionary or like the very obvious professions that a faith-based individual might go for. But for the rest of us that are not pastors and are not missionaries, how has God empowered us in order to glorify Him and to lead others to Christ? Okay? So I think it would be very helpful to just go through a brief introduction of who I am, and then I would love to hear first name and then also what you do for either a living or a hobby. And the reason why I want to highlight that really quickly is because that may very well be your spot where you're using your gift, or maybe where you'd like to use your gift. Okay? So again, my name is David Foertsch. I work for Goodwill of North Central Wisconsin. I'm the training program manager there, and I facilitate one-on-one and group teaching for everyone from youth at the Boys and Girls Club to team members of our own to people in homeless shelters. I try to empower them for a better life, as well as finding and maintaining community employment. So what I would love to do is I'm going to start up at the front with Aiden here, and then we're just going to snake on back as quick as we can. First name, and then either what you do for a living, or if you're not working, what you do with your time.
I'm Aiden, and a lot of my time is spent participating in local community theater productions.
Awesome, great.
I'm Joe Bach. I'm tired and retired.
Awesome.
And I spend time volunteering here at Christ the Rock and for Trout Unlimited, doing stream improvements and working with another nonprofit called Friends of Stony Brook, and it involves the community statewide to further children's education on trout in the classroom.
Awesome, thank you.
Tony, recently retired, spent many years in the hospitality industry, about 30 years, so that's kind of where I kind of channeled my work there at the church.
Great.
Is at the coffee shop there.
Awesome, very good. I guess I'm trying to go backwards like this.
Adam, I work at Bass Mechanical Operations Manager for HVAC service.
Okay, great. Mr. Josh.
What are we saying?
First name and what you do for a living, or what's your time?
Okay, I'm Josh. I'm the pastor of community and discipleship at Mission Church here in town.
Perfect.
Bill Block, retired Navy. I volunteer at the local elementary school in Brandon, Wisconsin.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm Jeff. I work a full-time maintenance job and part-time ministry here.
I'm John. I'm a teacher and coach.
Great.
Warren, a college student, 9 years. Gives advice to people how to deal with autistic people.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm Frank. I'm an accountant and football coach.
Okay, great.
Bill, semi-retired.
Awesome. Great.
Chris, design engineer by day and his family man by night. And Joe, pastor.
Awesome. Thank you.
Jim, I install and repair internet service.
Great. Thank you for that. We need it.
I'm Sean. I'm a pastor.
Mitch retired. Just do very service work. If I'm not doing that, I'll make Sunday classes.
David, I work at Countryland and I'm assistant trainer in call center.
Great.
My name's Anthony. Right now I'm the case manager at a homeless shelter, and then in the fall I'll be starting grad school for mental health.
Awesome. Good for you.
I'm David, retired. I volunteer at Freedom Center Food Pantry every week.
Awesome.
I'm Uriah, and I spend most of my time doing
diversity. Very good. All right.
I'm Bradley. I'm a cook in an Italian restaurant. I'm on my also playing instruments, guitar, piano, trumpet.
Great. Awesome.
I'm John. I'm jack of all, master of none.
I like it. I like it.
I'm Todd. I'm an engineer at Kimberly Clark, and I find junk and fix it.
Cool. All right.
Tom, I currently work at Gulfstream, and I also have a side business of consulting on very large environmental remediation and cleanup projects, and I'm active in somewhat active in ministry in Israel and the Lebanon border, Shepherds of Hope, a little bit in Haiti, and I also played, I haven't recently, but I played percussion, and I played in a lot of worship bands and professional as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Great. Gentleman with the coffee. First name and what you do.
I'm Joe. I'm a fabricator.
Okay. Great.
Kevin, case manager at Driver Center.
Great. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I know that it takes a little bit to get through everyone, but I want to highlight something about that. Okay. I'm not doing that because I'm going to try to remember all your names because I already forgot most of them. Don't worry about that. The point of this is there's power in a name. There's a power in professing what we do. Okay. Because I think there's a lot of pride and a lot of satisfaction and self-worth that we find in where we spend most of our time. And so when we're talking about applying these spiritual gifts, what I want you to think about is how this applies directly to you. Not for someone else in the room, not for what you wanted to be, but now you couldn't be anymore, but where you are right now under your own 2 feet. Okay? So let's jump on in. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." The breakdown of this, and the really cool part about this, is that God has given us one or more spiritual gifts to serve Him in His kingdom and for His glory, right? So like I mentioned before, this is about glorifying Him. We might be really good or have a really good skill, but it might not necessarily always relate to glorifying God. It doesn't have to, right? We can have just fun, random hobbies on the side too. But if we're spending time looking to glorify God and to really connect with Him and to connect others with Him, this is where this really comes into play. Notice too how it says one or more. So when I go through these 7 spiritual gifts, these are kind of the 7 main ones here. I don't want you to pigeonhole yourself and think, well, I'm in leadership, but I really can't be a servant because I'm already leadership. It's okay to have strength and to have a sense of giftedness in different areas. But I will argue that we have one kind of main one, or one that is just kind of our natural go-to, our fallback zone, or where we feel most comfortable. Once you've discovered your spiritual gift or gifts, it's time to begin applying them. This session will explore each of the gifts from the perspective of application, strengths and weaknesses, and how to explain to others how best to use your gifting. And I want to explain one word in that last sentence that might have given yourself a red flag, and that's weaknesses. You might be thinking to yourself, well, how can it be a gift from God and have a weakness? And I will explain that in saying that we are all human, and sometimes our tendencies as humans muddy the water of that gift. And I will explain what that is, especially in my own gift, because I know it well. And so again, when we are in a good spot with God, when we have a close relationship with Him, oftentimes we're going to be using our gift for good and in a good way. If we get to a part where we are potentially using it selfishly, or we're not thinking about God or thinking about the good, the best for others, that's when it starts to become, those weaknesses might come in. So keep that in mind as we go through. 1 Peter 4:10 says, "Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in various forms." Okay, so serving others is a big part of this, as well as glorifying God through them. And also, I normally preface this in my intro, but if you have questions along the way or comments, even comments where you're like, I don't actually agree with that, or I don't believe that, please raise your hand and talk, because at the end of the day, I don't want to be the only person talking in this room. It's really boring when I just lecture all day. I tell every single group that I do through my work at Goodwill that if we're not having a discussion and a back and forth sometimes, then it can get kind of dry and we lose people, all right? And I really want to keep everyone's attention as best I can. Okay, one more a splash of words here before we get into the different gifts. This is kind of where they are found in the Bible, in Romans. So if you're interested in reading straight from the Word as far as what these 7 gifts are, this is a good place to look. Romans 12, 6 through 8 says, "Since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, each of us is to exercise them accordingly." And here they are. If prophecy, according to the proportion of his faith. If service, in his serving. Or who he teaches in his teaching. Or who he exhorts in his exhortation. He who gives with liberality. He who leads with diligence. He who shows mercy with cheerfulness. We're going to walk through each one of those right now. So we're going to start with the prophet. It's almost kind of funny the reason why we're starting with a prophet, because these are very like say it how it is type of people. If you know someone in your life that is a Christian and they don't sugarcoat things, oftentimes they might come off a little bit on the blunt side when they say things as they're trying to challenge, encourage, or convict. You may or may not be speaking to someone that has the spiritual gift of prophecy. This person is a messenger, a proclaimer, a provoker. They don't sit idly by when they feel like a discussion needs to be had. If they see something in someone else's life that they're like, "Hey man, how are you doing with your sexual purity right now?" Blow you off your seat right there. You didn't maybe expect that question to come out, but they did, because they're ready to go at any time with conversations like these. Okay? They value passionate following of Christ, what's right, conviction, and repentance. They speak up, they challenge, they say it like it is. Okay? We need people like this, because sometimes I might resort to the, I don't want conflict, I just want us to all have a great relationship together, right? That's where I sometimes default to. And if I don't have the occasional prophet in my life to say, "Hey David, all right, let's have a conversation," right? They're really used for that. Now, a couple of strengths and a couple of weaknesses. The strengths are they get right to the bottom, right to the very root of maybe what's going on. And oftentimes, so again, prophecy, it's not like they prophet not in the sense of like they see the future. Prophecy in sense of like God can literally put something on their heart to have a conversation with someone else. And they have the wherewithal or the ability to have that conversation. And that feels natural to them, that feels good to them, when they do something like that. So some of the weaknesses, if I find myself, if I were to be a prophet and I am trying so hard to drive home a point that I end up hurting someone emotionally or spiritually in that moment, that's where prophets can kind of fall short. And that message can be really fall on deaf ears. And it talks about in the Bible how, when we sow seeds and we try to spread God's word, that, if it's not the right timing or it's on rocky ground or the person's just not in that moment to talk about it, it really may be, worthless, okay, in that moment. So sometimes the prophet could not sense that idea of maybe this isn't the right time, and then they just bulldoze that point anyway, okay? However, the overall strength is absolutely powerful. If we don't have this type of gift in the church or in various roles in our community, then obviously some stuff just might not be said when it needs to be said, okay? Just by a show of hands or a nod or give me a blink or something like that, who thinks that they have prophecy in their set, as their gift or as their set of gifts? Any idea? Have a couple hands, couple nods, okay? Now, for those of you that did raise your hands or nod, if you feel comfortable, I would love to hear how you are using that prophecy gift now. Are you using it in your line of work, or are you just using it in your personal life? What are you doing with that gift?
Of course they feel comfortable.
Yeah, of course, that's true. Thank you, John.
I'm going to raise my hand for my son here because he's not letting us know that he's a prophet, but he is. He speaks up. He tells me stories of correcting other members of the band when they're acting a fool or they really need to get the song down and whatnot.
Sure.
And challenging other students in school when they're running their mouths and not being the most Christian attitude towards their fellow classmate and calls them out right there on the spot and says, that's what you look in the mirror first there, buddy. And a lot of stories like that. And
Yeah.
I'd like to hear that news also.
Yeah.
Ditto, just say it, just ditto, perfect. Copy and paste. Yep. Very good. Awesome, I love that. Thank you for that. And again, think about that each time we're going through these gifts, like how it applies to you, if it applies to you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it says in the Bible, end times about maybe it's for Israeli Jews, but Israeli Jews about the gift of prophecy. People gotta be careful about that. The devil can, just because you have a dream and you wake up doesn't mean it's all God. The devil can tempt a person to think that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great call out. Some of the things that a prophet as their gift might come to their head or come to their mind, they don't just want to take it as God's word immediately. In fact, I would imagine maybe challenge yourself with God's word. Like, is this correct? Is what I'm thinking correct? Is the way I'm about to say this in a kind, loving way?
You gotta look at what the person is saying. The angel can appear, the demon can appear, quote a Bible verse and vanish, and the devil is an angel, Satan's an angel of light.
Right, absolutely. Great point. I love that. We're going to move on to the next one here. Please.
Would a prophet be a challenge? Would a prophet challenge authority? Would a prophet challenge a leader?
Absolutely.
That's what I thought.
Absolutely.
Okay, then yes.
Then yes. There's no. They don't like necessarily have to check the room in order to say what they need to say. Okay. Now, that may be a tactical advantage to know your audience. It might help your message land a little bit better. However, in general...
I think it's a tactical advantage to not know your audience.
Sure. More so you're just kind of saying it out. Yeah, I agree. All right, jumping on to the next one here is the servants. They are a helper, a volunteer, armor bearer, and shield relating to the armor of God. They value meeting the need. They have action, reliability, no spotlight needed, right? These are people that serve and they don't need the limelight where people know that they did good, right? They jump in to get her done, and then they are a jack of all trades. Now, these people are like, if you need help with something, they say yes. And I'm not saying say yes like the people pleaser yes, which could maybe be the weakness that I'm about to talk to. These are individuals that do it out of the kindness of their heart. They do it because they believe that they can show God through their actions of literally just helping them. Whether that's helping change their tire, it's going to let their dog out if they're on vacation, it's serving them in whatever capacity they need. It can be big or small. It doesn't have to be, it just needs to be heartfelt and genuine. Okay? Now, of course, like I alluded to, one of the weaknesses of a servant could be, well, they're really, really, really good at serving the other people in the community, but they're not very good at showing themselves kindness, the same kindness that they give to others in a sense. The same way that they serve others, they don't take care of themselves. If you've heard of the phrase, care for the caregiver, I hear it often because I'm in that type of human services field. And if you have, what that means is like, it's very, very important to make sure that we take care of ourselves so that we are filled up enough to pour into other people, if that makes sense. Yes, sir.
I counsel people on some of what I went through growing up because my mom was too busy focused on her job at the time when she had some regrets about doing it. It's not just supporting kids' money. You gotta know what they're doing and get back to them emotionally.
Yeah.
Because it's good to know everything, because sometimes people are going to act a certain way and not know any better.
Right.
Because it'll be like a zombie, and it's like when the bubble pops. It's like, it's like a culture shock.
Very good. Thank you. Any servants in the room? Any people that you think that you are a server of others? Very good. Thank you. All right. In the interest of time, I'm going to skateboard a little bit. I always run long on my presentations because I'm a verbal processor. Sometimes it takes me a bit to get to my point. Should have apologized ahead of time, but I will apologize now instead. Okay, moving on to teacher. If you couldn't tell, this is mine, among others, but this is kind of the main one that I really feel natural in and I enjoy most. So the researcher, the logician, explainer, they value truth, accuracy, information, and understanding. They are thorough, corrective, and they show a lot of reason. It's interesting because Corey had asked me to come do this workshop not too long ago, and he gave me the transcript. I didn't know they recorded me, and obviously I remember they do now because there's a camera staring in my face. But it showed like, oh, 2 years ago, this is my gift. And now 2 years later, I feel like I've matured in that gift to have it be less lazy and potentially self-serving and more God-honoring and serving others, if that makes sense. I think that we can have a maturity scale on a lot of these gifts on how we use them and how we apply them and our knowledge behind them. And I was able to see that just by preparing for this message, my transcript of what I said and what I did 2 years ago to now. And I think we all have that ability to progress in those. A strength will absolutely be using logic and reason. If you were to include me in your brainstorm of how to do something at your workplace, I would very likely be a helpful part of that. On the flip side, though, sometimes I am so logical, sometimes it's so much about reason and truth that it is difficult to accept when people don't agree with you. That is the point of maturity that I've needed to get to, especially over the past couple of years. Whenever you debate with people about current world issues, oh my goodness, that is the one thing, if you talk about being triggered, that I would trigger myself by doing stuff like that. That's not a good idea. Okay, that's where my weakness kind of got in, where I try to like debate and be right, and then all of a sudden I find myself maybe not in the most God-honoring position. Okay, the goal of this really is to, when we are talking about truth, I like to use some of that truth as a little bit of a Trojan horse, if that makes sense. And not in like the death and destruction way in history, but more so like I'm going to inject a little bit of God into this conversation. As I work for Goodwill, it is not a faith-based organization, of course. I can't put God or spirituality, theology in the trainings when we talk about social skills, work skills, and everything else. However, I can talk about those very important characteristics of God and of Christianity, talking about treating other people with dignity and respect and being selfless. And I kind of like to sneak those in a little bit. It's not even part of the training, but I sneak it in because I think that not only is it truly valuable for the people that I'm serving, but it really does glorify God in such a way. Okay, so that's something that I do with my teaching it. Does anyone else believe that they are a teacher in the room? Do you like to absorb information and say truth? Yep, see a few. Okay, very good. Awesome. Again, when we're talking about these, think about how are you currently using them. It doesn't have to be the main part of your job. It doesn't even have to be your job at all. It could be you do this in your personal life with your friends and your family and just how you interact. It doesn't have to be in your career. Please don't pigeonhole yourself in thinking that, oh shoot, I'm a teacher, I need to go work, as a high school guidance counselor. No, you don't. You don't have to do that. You can do it in a lot of different ways, a lot of practical ways, simple ways. And again, hands at any point if you have questions or comments, please. The next one here is the exhorter. So they are an encourager, a connector, a coach. They value relationship. They value everyone's dignity, right? The fact that we are all human beings. We all deserve rights and respect. They value hope. They value the experience, kind of like that fun social, experience. They bring truth to life. They add optimistic color, and they are a friend of many. These are people that have a lot of, they are spread, very wide as far as their social grouping. Okay? The exhorter is really, really good at encouraging and giving compliments and lifting people up. Okay? And in a world that we we have a lot of negativity. Pretty much anytime you turn on the media, social media, anything in between, you see a lot of negativity. We need a lot of exhorting. We need a lot of people that can bring people up. Okay? So they're really, really good at lifting other people up. A weakness could be of the exhorter that sometimes they're so focused on the encouragement, optimistic, positive side of things that maybe they're missing out on some of that prophetic example of like convicting or saying something maybe on that like harder to talk about side. Okay? Again, they're very, very good at encouraging, but they might struggle with more of the difficult conversations. Does anyone believe that they are an exhorter? Big hand. Okay, those. Okay, yeah, several. Okay, very, very good. One person, whoever rose their hand, how do you currently use that exhortation gift? Yes, sir.
I work through positive assumptions. Many times something happens at work, it's not done right. Well, let's relook at it. Maybe personal life having a bad day.
Sure.
Didn't get any sleep last night. What happened to his wife, dog, house, whatever it is, mental stuff. Let's look at possibly just getting retrained, changing the training program to work, instead of calling him names and bringing his value down lower.
Sure.
There's a lot of other paths to look at first before you destroy him as a human being.
Great. Thank you.
I know personally, like I can tell very easily when something's not right with like somebody in my friend group, and I can find where like in having such a wide spread of friends, like to be able to be someone there to like encourage them through rough times, or like when something isn't going right, or like I found that sometimes a lot of people can like trust me very easily because I wear that on my sleeve very.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, for me, it's like having certain people you work with, like teachers, colleagues, work colleagues. You pick up, it's like you absorb energy from them of kindness, and that helps you. And it's like after a while they're not there, but you feel like they're there. Maybe they are. I mean, God, Yeah, you want to do a thing like that. I mean, it's good to work with certain people and do it before they leave, and there's a change. You can't replace a human being entirely in something.
Thank you for that. Next one here, a few more to go, is the giver, the value appraiser, the multiplier, the resource provider. They value wise investments, accruing or building up, and longevity. Cautious evaluation, they kind of look for the best use of things, and then strategy. This one, I think if I believe that I have multiple spiritual gifts, I have a little bit in this one. I think it lends to the kind of strategy, using some of that truth strategy to give in ways or something like that. Maybe not. I haven't really delved into it too much. But these are individuals that obviously give out of the kindness of their heart. They're not looking for anything in return. Similar to the servant, they're not looking for the spotlight either, right? That's a very key point, and I would argue really that's a key point with any of these gifts. I think if we're looking for a spotlight while using the gift, who's the spotlight not on?
God.
Yeah, and it's about glorifying God, right? It's about bringing people to Him, showing God's character through our actions and our behaviors. We don't need to preach the word verbatim to show people God. It can be just simply with our actions and our true intentions behind them. Okay? So some of the weaknesses, of course, could be like, and again, there could be many. I'm flying off the cuff with the weaknesses, but if they're really good at giving, then they're really maybe not focusing on what they need for their individuality or their family or anything like that. It could be something where we kind of give too much, or we give expecting something in return, or kind of that spotlight. That's kind of where some of those weaknesses can come up. Does anyone believe that they have the giver spiritual gift? Okay, got a couple. A little bit less than the others, which is interesting. Okay. How do you use your giving gift? What do you do?
I set aside a certain amount each month, and I make sure it's all gone by the end of the month.
Okay, all right. So very, very, calculated in spending and budgeting and stuff like that.
Very
good. How do you use it to serve others? Is there a way that you use it to serve others? You give something to others.
Well, when I see a need, I make sure it goes to them.
Very cool. Like any type of donation.
Whether it's Salvation Army, whether it's VFW, whether it's Red Cross or church or it just goes to them.
Right. And you brought up a very good point. It's not about you don't have to be a millionaire to be a giver.
No.
You just have to be a good steward of what God has given you. You could be in absolute financial poverty and still have the giver gift because you're giving from what you have.
Right.
You almost like feel it giving away, like you're tithing in a sense. Like you feel that leaving. That's what that's about. Very good. Thank you. All right. The leader is an initiator. They make plans. They're a plate spinner, which lends to a lot of different things moving at the same time. They are a team builder. They value progress. They value change. They value taking action. They set direction. They create movement, and they orchestrate people. Well, they try to get the team to work together. Strengths, obviously this person is absolutely needed in every type of organization, every type of business, even just in your social life and your family life. You can be a leader just by planning the next family gathering all together and getting a group text and getting everyone's, it could be something as simple as that, just to get some nice family fellowship going. It doesn't have to be that you're the CEO of a company. You can lead in a lot of different ways. You don't need to have the leadership, in your title. You don't need to be known as a leader on your badge to be a leader. God can empower you to direct people, to be, and oftentimes in a very kind way, right? To the point where they like to take charge, but really a good leader empowers and has other people have rise to their best occasion or their best potential. It's not about just like standing at the top and barking orders. That's not a leader. That's not God's goal. Okay. Some weaknesses, of course, of a leader could be, if they're worried so much about the team and efficiency and planning and getting things going, they might miss out on some of that personal one-on-one communication and that social aspect. So it's something to keep in mind that, it's great to lead a team and to meet goals and to be that type A, if that's what you are. But at the same time, if we're doing it in such a sense where you're missing out on that individuality, then eventually you might lose your team, because then they don't feel like they're noticed and taken care of and appreciated. Exactly. Who thinks that they have a leader spiritual gift? Several. Okay, very good. We're running a little bit over, but I still want to hear a little bit from you guys. If one person could say how they use their leadership gift, just in a simple, practical way.
Yeah, don't worry. So, having about 3 years in the summer series, I know a lot of doing the kitchen, and not only do I know what I'm doing, but I have a positive manner, teaching people. So, newcomers to the restaurant are not afraid to talk to me, ask me questions about what you're doing, if you're doing it right, if you're doing it wrong, correct them, show them the right way, and at least keep them.
Awesome. Thank you. Very good. All right. And I've seen hands show up or people that have wanted to talk. If you still want to talk after the fact, we still totally can. Just stay up here, and we totally can, or we can chat at another time, of course. And I believe this is the last one. Yes. Mercy, real quick. And if you have to leave, if you have to use the bathroom, you're like, gosh, I really get to that third class. This is going to be better than David's. Then please do that too. I'm okay with that. But this mercy individual is a feeler, a healer, and a defender. They value the soul of others, alleviating suffering, empathy. They're drawn to hurting. They absorb pain. They are compassionate to others, and they really patiently love others. Obviously, the strengths are, along with the, kind of like that exhortation gift. The mercy can really see when people are hurting. They can see and they can feel a lot of that pain. I am nowhere near have mercy in any gift, even an iota. I'm not very good at that. Okay, that's one of my personal goals as a Christ follower that I want to improve on in order to not just do the logic, but also do the heartfelt stuff. Okay, right? So for me, I look at that and I think, well, they're really, really good at meeting people where they're at and showing empathy. If you've ever seen the video of the difference between sympathy and empathy, there's someone in a hole, and you look at them, and sympathy would be like, sorry you're down there. Hope everything gets okay. Empathy would be grabbing a ladder, getting on down there with them, and actually sitting there with them. I'm so sorry where you're at right now. Okay, how can I help? What can I do for you? All right, that's what empathy is, putting yourself in their shoes. Some weaknesses could be, again, that care for the caregiver. It could be really easy to see other people's pain. Maybe not as easy to see our own. And so that's something to think about in that respect. I'm going to put up the resource slide here because obviously this is a very, very, I think I had 45 minutes last time, so I had to kind of rush a little bit. I don't want you to, if you take anything away, know that we all have spiritual gifts. We can use them in a variety of ways, whether it's work or otherwise. And please go to this resource, okay? If you want to learn more about these 7 spiritual gifts, as we talked about, how to learn more, how to apply them, then please go to that website at the bottom, navigatemygift.com, or contact Ben Lenz. He's one of the guys that does these trainings. He's the one that trained me as I was going through gift development. But I thank you for your participation. I thank you for all the back and forth, and I wish you well in the rest of your day. Thank you, guys.